very special guest who needs no introduction, my boss, the creator and driving force behind the Italian wine podcast, Stevie Kim.
Hello, Richard. Good morning. Buongiorno a tutti. I think actually this is the first time I'm being interviewed on the podcast.
No pressure then?
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure at all.
As well as being the brains behind the Italian Wine Podcast, you are, of course, a publisher and author in your own right. Can you tell us a bit about your background in publishing? That goes beyond the world of wine, Stevie, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we don't really have time for this. How long does your show last? It's
well,
like half an hour, right?
You can give me the skinny version. Yeah. Hello, and welcome to Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Hough, and I'm delighted that you're joining us as we get between the vines with some of the best wine writing out there. So sit back, pour yourself a glass, and enjoy the show with the Italian Wine Podcast. This month we have a very special guest who needs no introduction, my boss, the creator and driving force behind the Italian Wine Podcast, Stevie Kim. Hi Stevie, welcome to the show.
Hello, Richard. Good morning. Buongiorno a tutti. I think actually this is the first time I'm being interviewed on the podcast.
No pressure then?
Yeah, no pressure. No pressure at all.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for agreeing to come on the show.
You ran out of guests. So,
I ran out of guests.
Desperate times calls for desperate measures.
Yes, any port in a storm. As well as being the brains behind the Italian Wine Podcast, you are, of course, a publisher and author in your own right. Can you tell us first a bit about your background in publishing? That goes beyond the world of wine, Stevie, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we don't really have time for this. How long does your show last? It's like half an hour, right?
You can give me the skinny version.
Yeah. The skinny version is I have one husband.
Only one?
Yeah, one husband. He's Italian. He is a doctor. Medical doctor. I know in Italian everyone is a dottore. You and I are both dottori.
A dottoressa.
Yeah, dottoressa. But he's actually a medical doctor. He started the first inpatient treatment for eating disorders and obesity in Italy. So I started actually a publishing house to support him, to start doing self-help books. I carried some Anglo-Saxon authors who are really well established from, Cambridge, Oxford, etc. And then my one provincial Veronese husband, medical doctor. And we started doing books together. So that's how it started in the medical field, if you will, self-help books. And then I translated that into wine when I started with wine. That's the super skinny version of it.
Okay, perfect. And is that an activity that is ongoing then as well? Are you still involved?
Yeah, it's still ongoing. Although, Italians don't read very much. I mean, luckily, those who read, they read a lot.
Okay.
Right? But otherwise, Italians are known to be the last place among Western, I think, civilization in terms of readership.
Yeah.
So it's pretty sad. So it's still going on at a very skinny level, very focused.
And of course, I mean, with your wine books, your audience isn't particularly an Italian audience, is it? What is your mission? What is your what are your objectives as a wine publisher?
So the wine publishing, it's hard. It's very, very difficult. There, of course, is the physical aspect of it, which is the wine tasting, right? And sometimes we have to try to translate that into words, which isn't always easy. That's why I think, wine became such a snobbery, snobbery in a sense of feeling and in sense of expertise, because you have to describe those wine tasting notes into something poetic, if you will. Instead of just saying it's good, you have to have all of the other semantics and adjectives around it. Wine publishing for us has been very, very specific in sense that It started with Veneto International Academy. We needed a textbook because we did not have a textbook. So what we did was basically create a textbook for the students. That's how it started. And then it accelerated exponentially during COVID, because I said, well, that book, the textbook, it's called Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0. It is a very dense and very technical, very geeky, super geeky textbook. We needed to translate that into something really smaller, a pocket size version, and that's when we started doing the Mama Jumbo Shrimp books. The pocket size, digested, mini versions of the big concepts into something much more digestible.
And this is a bit like asking which is your favourite child, but which is your which book are you most proud of? Which wine book would you say is the flagship book? You mentioned Unplugged.
Yeah, well, the flagship book obviously is the Unplugged book, right? Because that's how we corral the entire Italian wine community, especially the wine professionals. And also because it's not written by one person, it's written by the community. We have a lot of the Italian wine ambassadors at large, and they have curated all the different entries, because we're talking about 444 grapes or whatever, how many they are in the book. So, and I suppose that is emblematic of what the community is all about, because there is significant contributors from the Italian wine community, and it's an aggregator of all things that we do. So I think that is definitely our flagship book. However, we do so many others, right? And we've done a couple with you and Professor Scienza, because he doesn't speak a word of English, although now with AI he can still do that. It's a bit atrocious, but he can do that. So we've translated his Italian into English. May I say, however, it's actually two-step process, because you are one of the Scienza whisperers. Yeah. So we have to translate Scienza into Italian, step 1, and then step 2, Italian into English. And we have been so privileged to work with him together. He is absolutely, for me, his love and passion for Italian viticulture goes beyond anything we have ever expected. And he's so generous, right, with his time and his knowledge. It is something that we can cherish forever, and we've turned them into words. Not always accessible, but we've tried.
There are challenges. I carry the scars on my own back, doing the work on translating and interpreting Scienza's book. But that really is one of the key outputs, I suppose, giving him a platform in that English-speaking audience. His most recent book, The Art of Storytelling, gives his perspective on wine storytelling. But I wanted to ask you, as an award-winning wine communicator, what is your advice to wine writers, wine communicators, and even producers about how to tell their story of wine, whether that's in a book or a video or a podcast or...
Well, I think, the answer is always, it depends.
Yeah.
Right? It depends, because it depends who's writing it, and most importantly, who your audience is. Who are you writing for? Who are you speaking to? Right? So you have to keep that in mind, because you can talk about the same thing, the same subject, wine tasting, for example, but you have to understand who the audience is, because if they're super geeky, you can get super technical, right? But if it's someone's just, maybe potentially interested and appreciates wine, then you have to talk in a complete different language. So I think it is very important, and you can't talk to everybody. That's, I think, an ambitious plan that everyone has, and we need to focus on who our audience is. So, for example, very easily, Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0. That is a very geeky book. So it is obviously a textbook. It is dedicated to the wine professionals. Of course, if it's a wine, lover, and they want to, delve deep dive into the Italian wine grapes, said, then, well, okay, go for it. In fact, we have translated that book into a skinny version, Italian Grape Geek Journal, right? So it's a synthesis, super skinny version of what that is. And I think that's for everybody. So you have to kind of modulate the tone and also the language, because every time you speak to a different audience, you're actually speaking in a different language. And I think it's like talking to, when you take the WSET course, right? When I start the course, I tell the students, it's actually not, this is not a wine course. It is actually a different language course, right? Because WSET has its own language and you have to learn that. So I think it's very important to keep in mind as a writer, as a producer of wine information, or entertainment, because if you're there to entertain, then you need to think about, how does this make my audience laugh? How does it make it entertain? So they're all different things. And you can tell that a little bit by, if you look at through all of our feeds, social media feeds, right? I have my personal account, and there I put like all the things that make me laugh, because mostly the one audience I'm trying to entertain is myself, and to keep my sanity of what we're doing, right? So there you'll find like stupid shit, right? Even like memes and a lot of backstage B-rolls, etc. Whereas we have the accounts for dedicated to this specific product, right? Whether it's a podcast, whether it's a book, whether it's the agency, whether it's Vinitaly, then they all have to have a different voice, right? Now, with the age of this collabs, I try to collab with a lot of the other channels, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? So it really depends who your audience is. And if you want to contaminate the other audience, then go for it, right? But keep in mind, primarily, who are you creating this content for?
And that must also, I suppose, influence where you go. Because for me, it just sounds all incredibly complicated. There's so many different social media outlets, there's so much technology, there's so many different ways to interact with your audience. Where would you say for a producer or for a writer, is there somewhere that's most important to be right now? And what about with the emerging artificial intelligence technology? Is that something that we should be embracing?
I think, it's a double-edged sword, right? I was reading, I think, yesterday, over the weekend, that Google had published like the top 40 jobs that AI is, most likely to eliminate, right? And
podcast hosts?
Yeah, no, it says Richard Hough. Yeah, no, writers, translating, these skills will come under attack, right? But if we all use ChatGPT, right? But we have to use it as a tool. It cannot be the all done game, right? So I think it's very important to keep that in mind. But certainly, certain research, brainstorming, this kind of stuff, I think AI will certainly be, on the one hand, incredibly useful and facilitates its time saving, etc. But then you get the danger of relying on it so much that you're not being creative yourself, and I'm afraid it's not exercising your brain enough, right? Yeah. So I think you have to try to, like anything you have, right? Before it came the smartphones, right? What did we do, right? I mean, I see some of the kids, even my own kids, without Google Maps, they cannot navigate. If you give them a paper map, right, like the old days, like they can't figure it out. Right? So, you see often, like if you go to touristy areas, even in the city of Verona or Venice or any like very touristy place in Italy, and you see all these people with Google Maps and they're kind of going around in a circle. You can see them there in their face. They're like, which direction do I go? Right?
And glued to the phone as well. They're not even looking up and observing
they're
what's around them.
Completely reliable. And I think that is the danger. But certainly use everything as a tool. What you have at your disposition, but don't rely on it 100%, because AI will make mistakes, and it often does, and you need to also evaluate the content you're producing, contextualize it, and also with the assistance of AI, but also with your own character and judgment.
Yeah. It's probably a topic we could talk about all day, Stevie,
Yeah.
but I'm conscious of time. So let's move on. And I want to understand what you've been up to recently. Temperatures here in Verona and in Italy are soaring, though not today. It's a bit like a Scottish summer in Verona
I love
today.
it. I love it. I should move to Scotland.
Yeah. But so most of us are just trying to stay cool and relax. But you've been busy. You've been on the road. So tell us about some of your recent adventures. Where have you been? What are the big issues you encountered? And what trends are you seeing both domestically here in Italy and internationally?
Okay, so
That's a
you think
big
I'm
question.
Nostradamus, right? Basically, I'll just talk about the most recent trip last week, right, which
Yeah.
was to Calabria. Calabria was incredibly interesting because number one, it was the first time I'd been to Calabria. Yes, mea culpa. Like I've been to 19 other regions, but I had never been to Calabria. So it was my personal first time. It was hot in terms of temperature, but Italian Wine Podcast was actually a media partner for Vinitaly in the City. Now, for those of you who are less familiar, Vinitaly in the City is an off-site event, an offshoot of Vinitaly during Vinitaly in the city of Verona. Actually, I coined the name Vinitaly and the City after Six and the City to move the kind of the hooligans and the kids who just come for drinking, who wants to have wine, to the city so that they can enjoy the city and enjoy the wines in the city instead of in the trade halls, because I really thought it would have been important to try to screen all of these non-professionals to elsewhere. And I think in Verona it worked, and this is the second edition. Actually, they brought it down to Calabria. And it was super interesting because it was clearly a B2C event. It was a consumer event, right? It was in the middle of nowhere. Now, middle of nowhere, I mean, it was literally on the side of the archaeological site of Seabuddy, and the nearest airport is about 90 minutes. So it's quite a ways. It's middle of nowhere, but there are more than 20,000 attendees.
Incredible.
Right? So it was actually beautifully organized. And I think, if we want to talk about trends, I think we cannot be too snooty about just trying to talk with trade people, because in the end, I think it is very important also be in contact with the end consumer, right? So I think this is something that we have to be a little bit more aware of in terms of the wine business. What I've told actually in Calabria, because I did a little talk down there as well, and I think Calabrians, mostly, I would even say, like in the recent past, it was up to 90% red wines, right? Very structured red wines. So they need to start thinking about, white wines, because I do believe Italian wine, the white wine will be the future for Italian wine in general. I know that's a gross generalization, because exactly of what you said, due to climate change. What they're doing now, interesting, is that they're producing more rosé. So it's not red, it's not white, but with red grapes, of course, because rosé, the color comes from the skin, and they are creating more rosé, especially for summer, for the to broach the younger generation. So I think these are some of the things that some of the new trends. And there I did see, surprisingly, also a lot of the younger generation. And that for me was very, very positive. The other aspect, of course, is the food. Because I know anyone in the wine business, they think wine is the absolute protagonist. But I really think it's the food. It's the food that sets the tone. And then the wine. I know that we in our minds, all of us in the wine world, we would love to think that wine is the sex appeal, right? But it is really the food. And I saw that broaching wine with the food. When there's food, it is much easier to introduce the wine element.
Yeah.
right? So I thought these are all things that, some of the things that were interesting about Calabria.
And it doesn't have to be like a three-course heavy Italian
No,
meal.
no. These were street foods.
Yeah.
It was very smart. And, you know, Calabria is interesting because it's between the two seas, but also it's you can see the mountains, right? So you have both the, you know, the influence coming from water in terms of food and as well as the mountains. I mean, we went to one osteria. It was in the middle of nowhere. I think it was called Acri, near Cosenza. It was called Controverso, Osteria di Controverso. But I mean, in dialect, it was something else. For the antipasto, of course, it was, I think, literally 20 or even more antipasto coming out. I was just so overwhelmed. I'm like, okay, I'm done. And then they're like, okay, now the primo and the grigliata, you know. So it was, I felt like I was in a wedding. But the setting, I mean, very beautiful food. You know, because it was a modern interpretation of the local food. So it wasn't, you know, you expect in the middle of nowhere, you know, very traditional local food, but it was, yes, local, but they had that modern touch to it. And I think there's some serious talents coming out of also Calabria as well in terms of food and wine hospitality.
Sounds amazing. And is that going to be an annual event then? Is that something that they're going to take on the road somewhere else, or how will that work in the future?
So this is obviously a joint venture, you know, collaboration partnership with Calabria region. So it's Vinitaly in the city. Of course, the brand is owned by Verona Fiera. So they actually organized everything. And the region, of course, they helped to finance, because to pull off something like that, I think they promoted the local producers. There were about 90. So the wine production in Calabria is relatively small if you compare to other big regions, especially like Veneto. And then that was to promote the local wineries, but they also had other organizations, you know, like Donne del Vino, and then, you know, Murano Wine Festival, and then Gambero Rosso. Like, they all had their little side stands as well. So they tasted, the consumers, were able to taste not just Calabrian wines, but also wines from all over Italy. And the long-winded answer to your question is yes, I believe the third edition is already being planned, and Vinitaly is planning to go elsewhere in Italy, yes.
Yeah, it seems to be a kind of current trend or recurring theme, this idea of going out and meeting the consumers where they are rather than expecting them always to come here to Verona.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was your short haul trip, just a little jaunt down to Calabria. You've also been further afield, and Central Asia I know is an area that's of particular interest to you at the moment. Can you talk to us a little bit then about Kazakhstan and what you've been doing in Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan. Absolute opposite of Calabria. I think it's one of the most northern part of, you know, the map here. So Kazakhstan, very interesting. We used to do Vinitaly Russia, hugely successful. And I don't say that lightly because I hate superlatives, right? I do say super skinny a lot. I realize that. Because of the war, we've tried to do something as an alternative, right? Not to replace it, but as an alternative in terms of market, where they speak Russia, yes. But also there is a big Italian wine community there in Kazakhstan. The population is incredibly young. More than, I think about half of the population is under 25 years old. It's just amazing. And you see that everywhere you go. We went to an Italian restaurant, like one of the new restaurants right now. It's called Giardino. And I guess that's kind of the new trendy restaurant right now. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's beautiful. And what we saw was that every single table was completely participated by young people. The oldest people, obviously, at the restaurant were us, right? that's, sad from, our personal perspective, but incredibly optimistic, right? So it's exciting to see young people dine out and enjoy the wines, potentially, and Italian wine is actually number one in Kazakhstan. So a lot of enthusiasm. It's a small market, right, still, but I think it's potentially interesting also to use as a bridge to going to other Central Asian areas, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. I can't even pronounce all of them, right? But all the countries that ends with tan. We love it. It's actually beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's the country where Almaty is where the apple was born. So Almaty, it means like the grandma of Mela, which is apple. So the apple originates from, all apples in the world originated from Almaty. Which is very interesting. And the cuisine is very interesting too because they're nomads. So I think one of the most beautiful restaurants, I know, like if people are listening to me, they feel like, they might think like all I'm doing is eating and drinking. But I mean, yes.
You're working.
Yes,
You're
yes.
working,
This is part of work. One of the most beautiful restaurants that I've been to in my entire life. It's not like Michelin or anything like that. But it's called Aul, and they've interpreted the nomadic cuisine into modern styled presentation, and super interesting, super refined, although there's a lot of horse meat involved, which I'm not a big fan, but it is one of the most beautiful places that I've been to.
Okay, so from the peace and tranquility of Central Asia, let's head to the United States. And many of our listeners will be familiar with Wine to Wine, the annual business forum held in Verona in the autumn, but this year the forum is transferring to Chicago.
Yeah, so actually Wine to Wine, first time after 11 years we're going to Chicago, and it is actually an event in an event. What I mean by that is it's inside Vinitaly USA, Chicago. So Vinitaly USA, this is the second year in Chicago. Concurrently, we have Wine to Wine. We'll have in one room dedicated to Wine to Wine and Vinitaly International Academy. So a lot of things going on in the U.S. I know these are challenging times, but we want to give more support and energy into the U.S. market because in the end, it is the most important market for Italian wine, literally, at the moment.
Yeah, and will Book Corner survive the relocation to Chicago?
I don't know, Richard.
This is the question that we're all demanding to know. Never mind tariffs.
I would love to have a book corner. I mean, we're thinking of doing like maybe mixing the book corner with the podcast corner or something like that. But I'm not sure because we are not in fully charge of the event, and we have one dedicated room, and it's very tight, right? Because it'll be alternated by 30-minute sessions and 45 minutes master classes. And it's just 2 days, and then we have the pinning ceremony, we have the opera wine announcement. So it is seriously packed, and I'm not sure there's room for a book corner. Maybe, we can work on that over the summer.
Very good. Okay, watch this space. After all that travelling, Stevie, you're obviously now looking forward to your holidays. So how will you be relaxing this summer? Where are you going? What will you be drinking? And what will you be reading?
So, I don't know if I would call my summers relaxing because I will be working most of the time. Paradoxically, when the offices are closed for 2 weeks, I feel like I work the most just because nobody else is around. Yeah. So when there's something going wrong, then people will need my help. So I'll be back in New York. I'm leaving Friday, of course. And I have so many books, right? Like so many. You gave me one, for example, right? You gave me Verona, Campione, The Miracle of 85. And I still have your books from Notes from Verona, the anthology one. So maybe I'll try to have a little read with that. Of course, we have all of our books, which I have to reread because the art of storytelling, wine storytelling from Scienza, like I read it, but I haven't really. I think I could read that book at least like 100 times, So,
and still not understand
yeah,
it.
still not understand 30% of it, which I'm satisfied with. And then I have so many books, whether it's related to wine, whether it's related to marketing, whether it's related to communication, and sometimes, most of the time, I'm reading stuff on my laptop, which is very sad.
Yeah.
So. That's part of just my job, and it doesn't feel like work. And I think someone said that your work is not really work when you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the way I am. I know that at the office you guys are not 100% convinced of that, especially when I'm screaming and yelling. But I do enjoy it, and that relaxes me. So.
Yeah. And what about eating and drinking in New York? What are you most looking forward to? What would be the first thing
in New York, I love having Asian food.
Yeah.
Because it's something I miss very much here in Italy. Because it's not very varied, right? It's mostly Italian. And when we're doing events, paradoxically, we're going to Italian restaurants.
Yeah.
So when I'm in my own time, I'm trying to have, Korean food. Like, I didn't even eat kimchi when I grew up. I only started eating kimchi once I moved to Italy.
Yeah.
The fermented cabbage. I wasn't keen. It was like smelly, and I was like, I was not a big fan.
Yeah,
but now I love it.
Sorry, I was the same with whiskey. Actually, I didn't drink whiskey when I lived in Scotland.
But now you're a big fan.
I know. It was only really when I came to Italy that I understood how highly regarded this product was, and this drink was, this beverage was, that I started to drink it in a big way.
What are you doing for holidays?
Well, I've just moved house, so our holidays are pretty limited. We're kind of still unpacking and tidying up the house, and we decided really to sacrifice our summer holidays. We'll undoubtedly get down to Tuscany, where we have family for a week or two. But yeah, basically quite local. One book I've been rereading actually quite recently is a book by Tim Parks, published in 2003. But it's his book called Italian Neighbours.
I know, it's great book.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And I reread it because I found it when I was unpacking my boxes, and it's still incredibly relevant, poignant, and nothing changes. He wrote this 20 years ago when he moved to Italy.
Nothing changes.
And I'm still encountering the same kind of issues and problems.
Yeah.
But he does it with such warmth and affection.
Yeah, it was before iPhone, before AI, of course, before a lot of things, right? So
some things have changed, sure. But brilliant book, and very funny and very well observed. So highly recommended, especially if you're thinking about relocating to Italy.
So I live right on top of the stadium. I hope there are no stalkers listening to this. So how did this thing come about, the Hellas?
Yeah, I mean,
you get a big publisher this time.
I got a good publisher, Pitch Publishing, which is a UK-based publisher, and I mean, basically, football is my big passion.
Because you're a coach, right?
I'm a coach. I coach the kids. I play. I go to the stadium. I've had a season ticket here for more than 10 years. So football, and then I've started to do some articles and to write about football. And then obviously this year is the 40th anniversary of when Hellas Verona, the local team,
oh really? I didn't even know that.
So that was 85, so 40 years ago. So the book is basically intended to commemorate, to celebrate that anniversary.
See.
So it takes I spoke to fans, I spoke to players, I spoke to journalists. So trying really to recreate what it was like to be in the city, to be in Italy during that team, and then this incredible drama of a real underdog. And this was the era with guys like Maradona and Platini. Probably even you've heard of them, Stevie.
Yes, Maradona's all over the place in Naples.
Yeah. So it was an incredible era for Italian football, and I just felt this was a story that had to be told to an English audience, or English-speaking audience, because it's very well known, obviously, in Verona and in Italy, but not so well known outside.
So I'm not a soccer fan, obviously, right? So, tell me what's in there. Give me the synopsis.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it tells the story of that season from the first game, which was against Maradona's Napoli, to the last game of the season when they lifted the trophy. But there's a bit more
to it than that. There's kind of context and social context, political context, historical context. Because for me, the mid-80s is such a really colourful and vibrant period. It's a period when I was a kid. I grew up in the 80s, so it was really amazing to go back and relive that time. There was so much going on in Italy politically, economically, just emerging from the years of terrorism and stuff like that. So I've tried to give as much context and as much background as possible. So in some of the chapters, the football is almost like a footnote. But it really is a brilliant story, a story of an underdog team, of a group of players who came from nowhere and won the most prestigious title in world football.
So if this were your book were turned into a documentary, let's say movie,
yeah,
okay, who is the main protagonist of the book?
The main protagonist is probably the coach, this guy Osvaldo Bagnoli,
who's in
he's
cover.
On the front cover, yeah. And he was quite an idiosyncratic person, a man of very few words, from Milan, a working class background in Milan, but he'd been a player, a decent player, and then he'd coached up and down the peninsula. But his wife was from Verona, so he settled in Verona and took over the club and really had an immediate impact. But he had a very dry sense of humour, very few words. He could communicate to his players just with a look. So he would definitely be the star of the show.
And what about your notes from Verona? I bought this book from Amazon. I have to confess, I have not gone through the book yet.
It's one of those.
Is it still selling?
Yes, it's still available on Amazon. It sells, it's not flying off the shelves, but it still sells. It's I basically blogged for the first 10 years or so I was here. I was blogging about everything really from wine and daily life and taking my kids to school, inspired by Tim Parks, really. And then at a certain...
Have you ever met Tim?
I have met him. I've met him a couple of times, yeah. He's a lovely, lovely guy.
You should try to get him on your show.
I know, that's a good idea.
Hello?
But that's a good idea. But
it doesn't matter if the book is old. He's written other books as well. He's written other books,
but not really about wine, though.
No, you can, just
Let's get him on then. Okay, for sure. Yeah, why not? Okay, watch this space.
Yeah.
At a certain point I decided blogging just seemed a bit, I don't know, out of date all of a sudden. So I thought, I'm going to take this blog down, but before I do, I'm going to put it all in a book format.
Yeah.
And put it on Amazon. And that's what I did. So the website, Notes from Verona, doesn't exist anymore, but the book does. So in a way, it's kind of almost like a reverse technology, going from blogging back to traditional publishing, I suppose, but with Amazon as the intermediary.
Yeah, well, Amazon works. All right.
Okay, Stevie, thank you very much for your time. Maybe just everyone knows where to find you, I suppose, on social media. But if you want to plug where we can buy these books, where we can follow you on social media.
No, they can find me on the net. It's Stevie Kim, one word, 222. That's kind of my main handle. Okay. But if you're a wine professional, hook me up, tap me on LinkedIn, which is the best place. So I know I can make sure you're not a psychopath, but I'm what you call an open networker. I mostly connect with everybody who requests connectivity.
Great, fantastic. Thank you very much, Stevie. It's been really fun talking to you. Thank you
listen,
so
have a great summer.
Thank you.
Okay, ciao ragazzi.
Ciao tutti.
Thanks for joining us on Book Club with the Italian Wine Podcast. Tune in again next month when we'll get between the vines with another great wine book. Remember, our show notes, including full details of all the books we've discussed today, are available at italianwinepodcast.com or wherever you get your pods.